ทุกคนครับยินดีต้อนรับครับ Welcome to another coding session with Spot Skills. My name is Sunil, and today we're going to be working again on the next section of our web page. We started off with creating this main nav bar up here, and then working on the showcase, aligning these items based on this template here. So we're really looking at the template. Okay, จะเห็น template แล้วก็พยายาม copy template ข้างใน HTML และ CSS เป้าหมายของเราคือคิดเกี่ยวกับนั้นข้างใน HTML ถ้าเกิดว่าเราจะเห็น HTML แบบนี้เราจะความคิดในสมองของเราครับเราจะความคิดโอเคผมอยากใช้ layout แบบนี้ผมอยากใช้วิธีแบบนี้ผมอยากใช้ flex ที่นี่ grid ที่นี่หรือ arrangement แบบนี้ใช้อย่างไรแล้วก็ plan อย่างไรข้างใน HTML architecture ของเราครับก็ในอนาคตถ้าเกิดว่าเราจะใช้ React เราจะใช้ framework อื่นๆเราจะสั่ง HTML ของเราเร็วกันไปอย่างไรครับ so we're going to try and get this into our heads and try and really practice the layouts and how to do all of these strategies when we think about it. And so inside my contact form, this is where we are today. So let's continue on and finish this section up today. So the contact form is slightly different. เมื่อไหร่ผม plan HTML ผมคิดว่าโอเคจะมี background จะมี contact container title มี contact form โอเคมี image อันนี้ทั้งสองไปด้วยกันและอันนี้จะอยู่ข้างบนและมีข้างล่างแต่ผมทำผิดเพราะว่าผมคิดว่าไม่ I didn't recognize that this is outside of the background. Oh, okay. So now I have to just rearrange this a little bit and I can put this inside of a container. This is my contact intro, request a callback, and so I can put this inside of a container. So now it's inside of its own box. And my contact form, this also, I want to put in a few different layers in here. And I'm going to do a div.contact container. And there we go for these two elements in here. And then I want to be able to do my contact form contents. And so div.contact form content. There we go. And this will cover the image and the form as well. Okay, so now I have my form, I have my image, and we are hopefully ready to go. If I save this, now we're going to see elements come back in the middle. Perfect. So now I just have to work on this, remove the image. And so I'm going to comment, I'm going to first copy the image source, copy that, and comment that out in my style sheet. So now we can work permanently or just focus on our style sheet. Andตั้งใจบนที่นี้บน contact. And inside my contact, I'm going to paste in the image link for now. But first and foremost, I'm going to copy what we did up here in our services and the about section. I can copy that down. I don't need to redo that every time. So I'm just going to copy this, come down here. And instead of about, we're going to change this up to contact. And so all of that now just flows really easily. Now inside my contact form section is where I'm going to put my background. And the URL is going to be this same URL from here. Copy that, paste that in there, and voila, we'll see what happens. Oh, I did forget my location. So ถ้าเกิดว่าสงสัยว่าทำไมจำเป็นต้องเพิ่มจุด slash ครับเพราะว่าตัวนี้เราข้างใน style.css และ style.css ข้างใน folder css เท่ากัน images ถ้าเกิดว่าไม่มีจุดจะ css จะคิดว่า images ข้างใน folder css และอันนี้ไม่มีสถานการณ์ของเราครับสถานการณ์ของเราครับคือ images เท่ากัน css จำเป็นต้องไปข้างนอก css และพยายามหา images ข้างใน images มี contact-bg and we're seeing here the image มี break ข้างใน image ที่นี้ครับถ้าเกิดว่ามี image อื่นๆจะอาจจะมี hand repeat or ไม่ cover ทั้งหมด so จำเป็นต้องเพิ่ม property อีกหนึ่งครับ So background size is to cover, and that'll take care of that entire thing. Now the contact form itself, I'm going to put in some padding on top and nothing on the left and the right. And so now we have the images float down a little bit, and we've got some text align in the center. There we go. So we can either do text align center, or we can change that in a moment. But now I'm going to use Tony Pomja Chai Witi Mungan Jaktini. I'm going to use flex and grid here. So first and foremost, I'm going to do some flex, and we'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to grab just this section here, these 4 elements here, and put them down here. And we've got the contact form. Let's do this. Contact form. There's contact form content. My form left image, this is instead form image. And we can get rid of the arrow. Lop arrow die. Le tini. Contact form right. Instead, we've called this contact form inputs. And let's save that and see what we get. So now we get these elements sort of arranged in a flex. They're side by side. They're right next to each other. Looking good so far. And what I want to do is be able to give this a background so we can see it live. Background. There we go. Whoops. Did I not put that in the right place? Contact form. Content. Sorry, contact form content. And inside here, I just have form. I did not give it a class. / contact form input. Now we have our white background. One thing that's going to be very apparent is I need to be able to make these into separate lines. Tini sedengwa separate lines. Tam yang rai kap. I'm going to put in some break statements in here. BR is short for break. It's the same thing as a new line. There we go. Looks much better. And now that we have that, I'm also going to put in a gap between the two. So I can put in a column gap of, let's say, 50 pixels. And that now gives me some space in between here. So these two, our flexing and our box sizing is basically done. We just have to work on the actual element in here and clean this up. So what I'm going to do is, before I clean it up, here's the flex method of doing it. But if I can do it via grid, I'll show you how to do that as well. So we can just do a display grid. Grid template columns 1FR, 1FR. We'll see what that looks like. They're far apart. And all I have to do now is up top, I can choose to do 400 pixels of padding and bring them closer together, 450 pixels of padding. However far I want them to be able to stretch or come together, I can do that, no problem, and they'll still maintain their size. So there's multiple options on how to do this. I'm going to revert back to the flex method since that's what we started with. There we go. And now these elements come back closer together. And so now we can go into contact form input. Now we're going to work on the actual inputs. So what I can do here is make it a width of 100% for every one of the elements. So took element to me with 100%. Le kang nai niผมจะเพิ่ม padding ข้างในครับ. So inside, I'm going to zoom in here so you can see what happens with the boxes themselves once I add the padding. Pay careful attention to what's happening on the side here, because there's one property I need to add to make it a little bit smoother on the spacing. But the padding for now, I'm going to do 20 pixels up top, 0 pixels on the right side, 20 pixels on below, and 20 pixels on the left side. And now we see that we have some appropriate spacing. But in CSS, it's really complicated inside of a container. Very complicated and very confusing, but padding always goes over the container size for whatever reason. And that is something that you have to just be aware of. So even if I reduce this down to 10 pixels, Now it looks a little bit better, but still it's not exact, and it's really hard to get these exact values. So play around with it, figure out what works for you. But that's where I'm going to leave it for now for those. I'm going to add some margin on the top for each one of these inputs of 20 pixels on the top, and on the left and right, nothing. I might want to reduce this down to 10 pixels because 20 might be too much, or 15 looks about right. Play around with it. I'm also going to add margin up top, padding up top. Padding up top, probably around 30 pixels on the top. No pixels on the side, or on the right, or the bottom, or the left. And that'll push the elements down a little bit. And this is where we get into a little bit of trouble. So I added padding, and I took away some padding, and all of a sudden my boxes just went out of whack. So there's no real great way to fix this. One thing we can try is what's called border box or box sizing. So inside my body, or inside my box sizing, I can add in a border box, and that might fix it, but more than likely it's probably not going to do anything because padding is just really, really difficult. So I'm going to remove this for now. It all goes back to normal. Now my contact form input is up here. What I really want to do is add in contact form content padding. So if I go into my contact form content, I can add a padding up top of 30 pixels, 0, 0, 0. And that should push the elements down a little bit. Oops, I think I'm adding it in the wrong place still. Oh, sorry. I did not remember that I had a padding element in here already. So there we go, 30 pixels there. Apologies. So I can just add in 30 pixels up top here. I missed that. And now we can move the elements down and give it some breathing room up top. Perfect. And now what I'm also going to do is give this some background color. Background EEE. We're going to give it a border of none at all and a border radius of 10 pixels. And that changes everything to look very, very similar to what we have here. We're going to work on our message box real quick. So I'm going to copy that whole thing, move it into our text box, text area, and we'll see what that looks like. It's in our text area. There we go. I'm going to add some height to this, and I'm going to say 150 pixels, 100 pixels, just to start off with, see what that looks like. Okay, looks okay. And here we've got a submit, or a input type of submit. I've already got my inputs, and I've got a lot of formatting on my inputs. So what's probably better, my type input tini, kuan chai button tini bigwa cup. So normally you can do an input submit, but what's probably better is using what are called buttons. And buttons will submit the form the same way. So I'm just going to put in our utility class, jaktini. Mi utility class jaktini ko button cup. So we can just do a button there. And now we can also add in a class for custom button. So contact form button. And we'll see our second button show up here. Much smaller, much more compact, much more in line with this one. So I'm going to get rid of our original input of type submit and come back here, go all the way to the bottom, and outside of my, or inside of my contact form button, I'm going to do a background, and we're going to do a var, use a variable, and I'm going to use the tertiary color variable that we defined above. So var tertiary color. And now our contact form looks okay. One thing I forgot in here is to type the word send. Okay. And we can add a little bit of margin at the very top. Margin, top. Let's add in 30 pixels for margin top. Moves that down a little bit. And we can also increase the font size here. Font size to 20 pixels. And there we go. Much more legible, much easier to read. And this is our section. One thing I did not do yet is, border radius. of around 20 pixels. That'll give it a nice rounded border, very similar to what we see here. So if we zoom out, we've got two pages that look very, very similar, just purely CSS, purely HTML, and we've only just looked at this. We've never looked at the source code. Okay, hen page, local, sang page, tua eng kap. So if this was helpful, or if you want to see more on how to do this, or if you want to see other projects, feel free to make a comment in the YouTube section or on the Facebook section, and feel free to tell us what you want to learn, what you want to see. We're going to focus on HTML for a little while and then move into the back end of how to capture data in future videos. But this is really for beginners to be able to get you to understand how to just build HTML and the structure first before you move on. All right, เราจะเจอกันเวลานั้นครับ so